the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Italy? Whiskey? Oh, Italy! You could never look at my secret. Oh, no! Suddenly, don't leave me!
Let's begin.
Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat, and we are at Fireside Chat number 175. So this is a pretty decent number, and I'm here with a very special guest. Should I just say the whole thing? Like blonde in the belly of the beast?
It was such a... I never thought my YouTube channel would go anywhere, and so I'm like, this moniker doesn't matter, and now I'm too deep in it. Like, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, exactly.
My name is Rebecca, so
Rebecca.
That should help.
Okay, no, that's huge, because I was like, should I figure out what her name is, or should we just go with like an acronym, like whatever. So welcome to Honey Badger Radio. It's really great to have you. I wasn't sure there's so much that I want to talk to you about, but one of the things that I was especially impressed by was I watched your stream this past Sunday, and I'm unfortunately I don't catch a lot of these. But what I did catch that I thought was really neat was, I guess there are people in your community. You formed a kind of community around your channel of like regular viewers and such. And I guess they're like forming real relationships, right?
Yeah. I think we're at 10 relationships, like, man-woman relationships, and 3 engagements. And I'm pretty sure some people have had some kids. So it's just incredible. Like these meetups started as small little things where people could get together and say whatever they wanted. And then they became international meetups. And we had a Beijing meetup and stuff. And then it just started to grow. And now the pictures we get of people, sometimes it's like 40 or 50 people have come together totally based on our show to just hang out with each other and talk about whatever they want. And I think that is so cool. I'm so proud of the community that we've built. I never expected this to happen, but it's fantastic, especially the marriages coming out of it.
Yeah, that is awesome. Like, I say that because I think that at the root of what we're trying to do here at this channel, we want to build bridges between men and women. I mean, ultimately, that's and I think that there's a lot of things that people talk about on the news, a lot of the issues that they bring up, all of these various ways that we're, supposedly divided. But I think that at the end of the day, the only unity that is what I believe is the most important is the bridge between men and women. Mm-hmm. And I think that what you're saying is actually pretty promising, because it shows that, well, I guess it demonstrates that that men and women are trying to find each other in this crazy world, and that in your community that's happening, and that's great.
Yeah. I mean, what do you even do now if you have to date?
Oh my God, no.
Freaking nightmare, God.
It really is. It really is. So speaking of men and women, so why did you decide to start making videos?
It was somewhat impulsive, and I was working these kind of dead end jobs, and I was really dissatisfied with my personal life, and I just wasn't feeling whole and complete. And I was also really angry all the time. Like I was walking around Seattle, and I'm just seeing the society fraying around the edges. And I'm like, everybody's just walking around like this is normal. Like this is normal stuff. And the relationships between men and women. And this seems like such a travesty to me. So I was just furious all the time. And so the first video that I made, I just I can't believe it went viral, because I'm just sitting on my bed. My laptop is on my lap. It's like moving around. I'm using my built-in camera and audio and everything. And I'm just ranting at the camera for like 20 minutes about how everything's messed up. And it was just cathartic for me. Mm-hmm. So I just posted it, and I'm like, this isn't going to go anywhere. I'll just continue working these dead end jobs. And then it did. And what really was the last thing, like the last straw, I went to Europe. And I loved going to Europe. You know, I went there when I was a teenager and it was so beautiful and everything like that. And then I went in 2015 and I look around and it's just migrants like everywhere. And I was getting treated like garbage. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was getting sexually harassed all the time and nobody was doing anything about it. And everybody there was acting like it was normal too. And so I was like, people need to talk about what's going on. We can't just act like all of these things like Seattle is normal, like what's happening in Austria and Paris are normal. And so I just decided that I was going to start ranting online and totally destroy my life. What have I done?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it did seem like it snowballed into something, and now this is kind of what you do. What do you aside from, you know, because I guess you do interviews on your channel. You were also making videos. I actually watched one of your videos. I think it was called "What's the Problem with the Right" or something like that, where you were sort of talking about, you know, your thoughts on where the sort of, I don't even know if we call it the right, but like the sort of dissident sphere of commentators, you know, that don't like, they're not part of this sort of more progressive move. And yeah, it just seems like you're, you know, on the one hand trying to make sense of things, also asking, you know, people to like get their shit together. It's okay if you want to, like, you know, curse on the show.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Care. No, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Shit, fuck. All right.
But I also think you make a lot of really great points, and I actually appreciate the rage because, you know, I noticed that like we've been doing this show for, I don't know, at least 7 years now, and I get so tired of saying the same thing over and over and over. You know?
No, yeah. Like I think I even said that on the show last night because we were talking about something that led to us discussing the wage gap. And I'm like,
oh, yeah. Megan Rapinoe.
Yes. It's like 2021. Are we still talking about the fucking wage gap? Like, I can't do this anymore. And in 2015, when I'm buying my emergency food supply and all this stuff, I didn't think that we'd be in the same place in 2021. I can't believe it. Like, I will not explain the wage gap to anyone ever again. I'm not doing this. I'm so tired. Can we move on to something else? Like talking about how society is collapsing before our eyes. Is anybody going to talk about this?
Well, you know, it's funny that because I feel the same way. I get sick and tired of repeating myself, even to people who supposedly know this, but it's like they forget. Like, you know, like people I know personally that I've spoken to about these things. But I think that is what we're up against. These narratives, they're never ending because the people who are speaking them, the people who are repeating and contributing to these things, they're either drones that have no idea what they're saying. They're just repeating what other people told them, or they know it's a lie and they don't care. Yes. And I'm inclined in most cases it's the latter. I'm inclined to believe that in most cases where it matters, like people that are celebrities or politicians, academics, like they're just going to keep on lying. And I think that this is why it's frustrating because, you know, and it goes to something that you said in your video, like once you know these things, once you know this truth, you can't undo that. And it affects everything, the way that you know, interact with people. Like I have, you know, friends who I've known for many years, and I've explained my positions and I've made my arguments, and they have said, I agree with you 100%. You're right about this thing. And then something will come up like outside of us, you know, like, oh, so-and-so accused so-and-so of sexual harassment or something, right? And after everything I've said, they'll just go right back to square one. Yeah, I guess there's a problem with rape culture in our society. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, but we just had this talk, you know? Or when Megan Rapinoe, or who was there was a female actress in Hollywood that complained that she was in a film and there was a male actor that got a lot more money than her. But the reason...
yes, it was the girl from Room, Brie Larson.
Brie Larson. Yeah. Brie Larson? Or was it her? Or was it Jennifer Lawrence? I think it was Jennifer Lawrence. It doesn't matter. There was an actress that took money up front, but it was a lower amount because she didn't want to take a risk of perhaps making more. And there was a male actor that was in the same movie.
It was Michelle Williams.
It was a Michelle Williams. Okay. They're all the same to me.
I know. It doesn't matter. They all banged Harvey Weinstein. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes, you get it. And so, and like the male actor made a lot more, but the reason was because he said, well, I'll take less up front, but if the movie makes money, I'll take a cut of the profits. And so it did, and he got a lot more money. And so it turned into a conversation about the wage gap. And of course, my friends who I've spoken to would come up to me and they'd say, oh, well, I mean, that's kind of unfair, don't you think? And I'm like, no, she's stupid. She didn't take the risk.
She didn't take the risk, and women are notoriously bad at negotiating because we're risk averse from a biological perspective. There are biological reasons that we're risk averse. You know, if a tribe comes in and takes over your tribe, you've got a new husband so that you don't get murdered. So you just kind of adapt.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
how we are, you know? So we don't want to take huge financial risks. Women are just more risk averse. What I don't understand about this is, isn't it easier to admit that there are inherent differences between the genders than to think that the entire world is oppressing you and there's nothing you can do about it?
It would be a lot easier, but I think, and I don't want to like try to crawl into the headspace of the average woman, but maybe they believe that there is that the sympathy that you could garner from spreading the narrative that you're a victim of all of this is easier than taking personal responsibility. And the thing is that most other people, men and women, will bend over backwards to accommodate that notion. So why it's like it encourages women to behave badly and to behave like children, you know?
Yeah, to behave like children. That's the thing. If women actually wanted to incur the risk that men take on a daily basis, or that they take in the broader sense, like going to war and doing backbreaking labor, like one day on a construction site would make every woman be like, I'm out, housewife time, like I'm done with this. But everybody's just coddling us constantly, acting like it's so easy to be a man. Being a man, it seems like it would suck so much. You guys have to do so much more work. Everything is harder, so much more manual labor. Like, I'm out. No, I want to be barefoot and pregnant, and I am 100% fine with living that life. I'm totally fine with it. I'm not jealous of any man. I don't know. I mean, I just don't, I can't get behind the mentality that it's just easier to act like everybody hates you, everyone's trying to oppress you, rather than just be like, I'm different than a man. I can do things that a man can't do. They can do stuff that I can't do. And then just accept it. Just accept it. Like you have to accept a million different things on a daily basis that you're not super happy about. Just accept it. I don't understand. It's preposterous. I can't believe we're still talking about this, but I mean,
but yeah, the purpose again, it's all a grift. Like I'm serious. Like leftism is a gigantic grift, and all of it is just like them trying to use different sets of immutable characteristics to form their case so they can get money and power. That's all it is. And I'm done sympathizing with that with any perspective that is trying to like give the benefit of the doubt, because I've seen repeatedly, endlessly, that it just keeps going back to this grift, and you either know that there's a grift and you're in on it, or you're ignorant. And the people who are ignorant are the ones that I try to like direct my energy to, because maybe I can like reel them in and say, guys, you know, let's like think clearly and stop, you know, giving in to these narratives.
But imagine what you would have to ignore to still live in that state of ignorance in 2021. Like if the Kavanaugh thing was the end of all of this. After that, I was like, if anybody is still buying this gender horse shit after the Kavanaugh thing, like, I can't help you. I can't help you. I can't explain this to you. It was just like the last thing. I couldn't believe what was happening, and that people were like, well, he handed her the red Solo cup. I was like, are you people fucking serious? Are you serious? And I was even hearing people on the right, you know, like sympathetic to this woman, and I could not believe it. So in 2021, if you still are holding on to this leftist narrative, like, I am done trying to wake you up, you are my enemy, and I am done. And back to what we were talking about earlier, one of my biggest mistakes in this whole process was attributing stupidity or ignorance when I should have attributed malice to the left. And I used to think they're so stupid, they're so incompetent. And this coronavirus shit happened, and I was like, wow, that was elegant. That was an elegant plan, and they are much more competent and persuasive than I previously anticipated. I underestimated what they will do to gain control. And that was my failing. But now that I know, I mean, I think that we can probably switch, flip the narrative a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you this. This is a recent Allison, who runs Honey Badger Radio. She made a post on Twitter that got her into a lot of trouble. And I want to ask you what your thoughts are on it. And then I want to talk a little bit about feminism, because I believe that most of what we're dealing with is an outcome of feminism.
Yeah.
Yes, that includes all the race stuff, all the immigrant stuff, all of that. It's all just a product of it, But she made a post, and I don't know if I'll be able to quote it exactly, but she basically said something to the effect of men did not stop caring, or I'm sorry, did not start caring about women when feminism was conceived of, right? So feminism did not invent men caring about women. All right.
She got in trouble for that?
Yes. Oh. Because, I mean, well, first of all, I think that mostly she got in trouble because people who are feminists, right, male feminists especially, they despise the idea that this ideology did not create, caring about women, because it would mean that it was never necessary, right? It would mean that men cared about women before feminism, which they did. And so what I'm wondering about is how feminist are you? And do you believe that feminism has done anything good?
Do I believe it's done anything good? No. I mean, I believe it's done the exact opposite of what it purports to do. Back in the day, we saw men try to uphold. It's a preposterous claim to say that men never cared about women. Men have always had wives. They've always had daughters. They've always had sisters and mothers. There is something inherent to the male mind that makes them want to protect. And we used to see in all societies this concept of men protecting a woman's virtue. So feminism has totally unraveled this concept and done exactly the opposite of what it intended, which I don't think that it ever actually intended to get men to care about women. The worst outcome, I think, right now is that they doubled the workforce and everybody's wages were driven down, and now two parents basically have to work in most households, and you have to outsource the parenting to a disinterested third party, or an uninterested third party. So that's caused major issues. And I think that it's done a lot to the divorce rate because women are competing financially with their husbands, which is an unnatural state of being. It's fucking weird. Nobody wants to have that dynamic in their relationship, yet it's a dynamic of all of our relationships. So I can thank feminism for basically nothing. I squandered my 20s because of this horseshit theory. And now I'm probably if I'm lucky, I'll be able to have 3 kids. Like, if I'm lucky. I'm 33. I had my first kid last year. Like, I was really down to the wire on this one. And I blame myself because I bought into this and I pursued a career and everything like that. But also I blame society because I think to some degree I lack agency. I think that women to some degree lack agency.
You mean like they naturally lack agency, or like something about like the way our society has developed has taken that away from women and they bought into it? No,
I think we naturally lack agency.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to project
no,
my own...
I that's an interesting line of reasoning I want to go down, but you go ahead and finish your thing.
Well, I think that I don't want to project my own neuroses on other women, but I think I'm somewhat logical, and I think I'm able to noodle through a litany of problems and think about the different aspects. But trying to overcome my emotional reasoning is a Herculean task, and I just don't believe that your average woman is able to do that. Not every woman thinks like Ann Coulter and can just turn the maternal thing off, and I just don't believe. I think that most women are probably like me, and they are emotional and they need a stabilized support system, and that doesn't lend to being a good voter or to being a good citizen unless you're married to a strong man that you can follow. So I do think that to some degree, we lack agency. I mean, look at us just having run rampant in the political system. This is a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to throw a couple of typical kind of counter arguments, because the fact that you say, you know, feminism was never good, and this is something that we say all the time, and it's frustrating because we don't just get pushback from feminists. Obviously, you're going to get pushback from feminists.
Right.
You get pushback from moderates, centrists, and right wingers, that they all make this argument that I'm so sick of, where they'll say, well, you know, the vote is good, or the 1960s, the you know, we needed it in the 1960s, you know, and it's like, no, I don't know if you believe this or if you're just giving these people lip service so that you can then say, oh, but it's just gone off the rails recently, right? No, it was never good. And I think that we can challenge the vote even. So first I want to ask you, before I go to the vote, because I would like to get your thoughts on that. Okay, so let's say I'm a feminist and I say, well, I think that second wave feminism was good. Or I don't even have to be a feminist. I'd just be like a moderate, like a Ben Shapiro type. And I'll say, well, actually, you know, second wave feminism was good because whatever. My reasons are the birth control pill, the sexual revolution, women entering the workforce is good, yada, yada. What would you say to that?
I mean, I can't in good faith even argue with somebody that thinks the sexual revolution was a good thing for society. It was a good thing for men at the time, but it has clearly damaged all of us, maybe beyond repair. People were meant to pair bond with a single sexual partner at a young age. And we are just looking around at totally damaged people. And it's because of the sexual revolution. Pornography is a manifestation of the sexual revolution. This never would have happened if the 60s didn't happen. And I would argue that the sexual revolution was just a way for the government and the powers that be to further control society through our vices. I don't know how anybody could possibly think it was a good thing. And birth control, I mean, the estrogenic effects of birth control, we are still finding out today. It's getting in the water. Men have lower testosterone than we've ever seen. And I did a video about this actually.
And women. Because women need testosterone too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Women that are on birth control for a long time and they have a mate that they married while on birth control will often go off birth control when they're trying to have a baby. And there's this phenomenon where you go off birth control and you are just physically repulsed by your husband that you've been with for many years, and you hate his smell. You're not sexually attracted to him because birth control has turned your hormones upside down, and it's kind of allowed you to pair bond with somebody that doesn't get your engines revving, which is a disastrous consequence. So then what do? Like, you're 30 and you've been with this person for 10 years. You're trying to have a baby. It's like, you just have to accept that you're never going to have good sex for the rest of your life, that you're not attracted to your husband. And that is a recipe for divorce. So what has birth control really done for us? It's made it possible for everybody to bang each other without the consequence of pregnancy, although there are still emotional and other physical consequences. So fucking what? Like, everybody needs to get it together. Stop being a slave to your vices. Stop masturbating to porn. Stop having promiscuous sex with people. It's like, this cannot be good for anybody. The only people that I've ever talked to that think this is a good thing for society is a good-looking man in his 20s or 30s. That's it.
Yeah.
And you've seen what happens.
Well, even then, I was gonna say, he's gone. Well, I kind of saw it coming, but I
didn't. I was so shocked, and he's become a good friend of mine now, and it's just like, I can see how this has damaged his soul. And everybody always thought, even on the right, like, promiscuity, it only damages women. It only hurts women because men are able to tolerate a higher body count than women are. But like, when you're at that level where you've had sex with so many people, it clearly is damaging to the man too. It's anti-logos. It takes you away from God. It doesn't allow you to see a woman as a potential life mate. I just can't even imagine why anybody would think this is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that, again, this is, maybe this comes from people's natural disdain or like lack of compassion for men in general. But I think the average man honestly isn't trying to get a high body count. I think the average man is looking to find a good woman, and he wants to settle down. He has a sex drive, so he's interested. But I ultimately, just in my experience, so this is anecdotal, whatever, just guys I've known and myself, from the beginning, I think that the average man is like looking to pair bond and start a family. He just wants that, normal, simple thing. And sure, when he's in his teens or whatever, he might have a bad case of the horny, but when he gets past that, and the problem is that we've created, in terms of the sexual and the dating sphere, and I'm just going to say feminism has created this idea that women should be as, sort of sexually promiscuous and aggressive as men and compete with them in that way. But the thing is that I think the average man isn't even trying to do that. So that I think creates, especially if their testosterone is going down on top of that, and we have like a lot of men that are dealing with like childhood trauma, because this is another product of the 60s that I think is the most important, is the expansion of the welfare state and the single motherhood, which is a bigger problem than any other epidemic you could think of, especially in minority communities. And that results in, kids getting abused, they're joining gangs, girls are getting pregnant as teenagers because they're hitting puberty earlier because there is no fathers around. So their body's saying you need a man in your life. And so they become sexually active sooner, like 9 years old.
Oh,
and,
my God.
Yeah. And I've seen it. Like I grew up in the hood in Chicago, and I've seen every time I see a young girl growing up, she's like, just like any other child, and they're having fun and playing. And then they hit puberty and they're like 10, 11. And shortly after that, they're pregnant. And it's because they're hooking up with, basically it's it's babies raising babies.
Yeah.
And it creates this pattern of that. And that's where, it's like, how did we get George Floyd? That's how we got him.
Yeah.
That's how, like, he didn't know his father. So like, this is why I say, all of the other issues that we talk about, whether they're about race or LGBTQ or, whatever, all these other issues, even disability, those are all products of the kinds of culture and policies and administrative changes that feminism created. Yeah. Because to your thing about birth control, I've talked about this with Karen, the exact same stuff that you said, how birth control affects a woman's hormones. But in addition to that, Aiden Paladin, I don't know if you know who Aiden Paladin is. Oh, okay. Yeah, so she's been on the show a few times, and we had her speak at our last international conference on men's issues in 2019, so it was like the year before last. And she did a whole presentation on the birth control pill. So like all the info. And one of the other effects of this is actually things like, increased autism diagnoses, like in children, because the pill tells a woman that it makes her attracted to a man that she normally wouldn't be. One of the reasons why she's not supposed to be attracted to that man is because they might be too close genetically. So like they might be too familiar, right? Because when you're on the birth control pill, it tells your body that you're pregnant, and it makes you want to be around familiar people like cousins, brothers, aunts, uncles. And so the man they end up close to, even if they're, not like it's not incest, but like they might be too close genetically if you were to trace it back enough. And it kind of has a slight increased chance of, things like autism and minor, disabilities, learning disabilities, deformities, etc. So it contributes in a lot of ways. And I don't even want to get started on how that affects the Black community, by the way. It's terrible. It's terrible. There's a big problem with accidental incest in the Black community. There's a big problem with and other communities like that. You can take any place where there's a lot of sexual promiscuity going on, and a lot of women that are hooking up with the top men in that community, and those usually are like the men that are most capable of doling out violence.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're in the hood, you're not trying to hook up with the guy that has the most promising like investments. You're like trying to find the guy that's going to protect you and your children. So you're going to go after the thuggish guy.
And then he has the most children in the community.
Yes, because he's having sex with all these other women, right? And then those kids, they may not know who their father is, and they might meet each other when they hit puberty.
Yeah.
And then they have sex with each other. And that's how you get these crazy, like you get this crazy accidental incest. So it's all a product of feminism. That's what I'm saying. It's all a product of that. So like, because we're not allowed to judge these women at all. Like that's one of our, one of the biggest problems is we have a situation where what feminism fights for now, at least at the bottom level, like on a TikTok level or just like random humanities students, is that they're basically fighting against judgment.
Yeah.
That's their whole thing, right? Body positivity. I want to get all the tattoos. I'll grow hair everywhere, and what their goal is just don't judge me. Don't stare at me,
Yeah.
Sleep with as many men as I want.
TikTok videos where chicks are talking about having abortions and stuff, or they're the abortion clinic, and it's shameless. It's shameless.
Yeah. But that's what they want. They don't want people to judge them, and they fear it, and that's why it makes them so angry if you do. And this is the thing that I think that especially our young people today, they're terrified of judgment, and so it might have something to do with them being so sort of feminine these days. In general, like maybe that's a feminine thing. I don't know. Okay, so what about the vote? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you look at the suffragettes at the time, they were all childless hags,
Mm-hmm.
They were all the people that would just be like the fat, blue-haired feminists now. The women that were anti-suffragette, and some of those posters of the era are so funny and spot on. There's one where like the guy is bathing the baby or feeding the baby or something, and the woman's on the way out the door, and it's like, Dad has to do all the women's work now because Mom wants to go and vote. And I think it was prophetic. I mean, I think that they were really onto something about how gender roles were going to be transformed. But I think that strictly just using the evidence of our voting patterns, we are not responsible enough as a voting bloc because of our innate need for financial dependence to be able to vote. I mean, we can't vote. It's a real problem. We will always vote for state-sponsored stability. We'll always vote for the welfare state. It's going to happen again and again and again, especially within the realm of single motherhood, which is being reinforced from all angles. So so it's a disastrous combination, and I don't think this is accidental. Obviously, it was made to be this way. But you have single moms that need to feel that daddy stability, and they need the money, and so they're just going to vote in line with whatever's going to be financially beneficial to them, obviously, because that's rational behavior for them. But I think just based on our voting patterns, we clearly have lost the ability to make good decisions in the voting booth.
Sure.
Suffrage was obviously a mistake.
Yeah. So do you think that because you're making an argument from outcome, which is, the voting was a bad idea because we're looking at the outcomes. Do you believe that voting, because this is how it's framed, and I think the framing is important to look at. Do you believe that voting is a right?
No, of course not. It's why you can strip a felon of his or her vote because they've lost. I almost said they've lost the right to vote, but I don't think it's an inherent right. Why? It's a privilege to be able to vote. You have to have a vested interest in the country, not in yourself. And so, if I could choose, I would give one vote to every land-owning family.
Mm-hmm. That's how it was. I think that's how it was. Yeah. So then, okay. So if you believe that voting is not a right, which it's not, because I don't believe in positive rights at all. So like voting is it's a privilege.
Yeah.
But more than that. It's actually a responsibility. It should be a burden, like a huge deal, right? Mm-hmm. And it's obviously not treated that way. I mean, they're talking about lowering the voting age to 16. They're talking about all this crazy stuff, right? Because ultimately that serves who it is. Now, if that's true, then basically we screwed ourselves when we gave women the vote back in the turn of the century, right? It was eventually going to slide in this direction. I'm actually shocked that it took so long. Maybe those world wars slowed things down. I don't know. But so if you believe that, then what about, let's go to the other side of the gender spectrum for men. Men today, they get the vote, but they must register for selective service. So the vote doesn't come for nothing. Would you also remove that? Like, let's say that I have crowned you Queen of America, and this is what you can do. What would you do about the men's vote? Would it be the same, like, outcome wise?
But you could opt out of voting and selective service. Yeah, I think that adds a weight to the intellectual burden and the moral burden of voting. I'm fine with that. And then we do have to have voluntary service members.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Or, because we've talked about this a bit, because I know that, like, first of all, we'll never be able to take women's vote away from them. So that's not even in the cards, right? It'll never happen. The only way it will happen is if women vote to have their vote taken away,
or
which they'll never do.
Collapses, I mean.
Yeah, or if it collapses, if things get desperate and then women all of a sudden like say, "Oh, we need men to help run things and rebuild everything," and then we'll start calling them garbage after they're done. Because that's what we're doing right now, right? I mean, like literally everything we have is a product of what men did in order to make life comfortable for women and families. So like this is how we got here. And I'm not saying that to take some kind of collective credit for that. I just know that that's the reality, right? Men built Western civilization so that it was comfortable for women. And they organized it in the hopes of essentially keeping them safe. But what we have with feminism is the outcome of an overindulgence in women's safety and security, because only in that level of decadence could you even have a feminist movement. And nobody even recognizes that. Like, right? Like when feminists say we're constantly fighting for women's rights and all this other stuff. And it's like, and they talk about this patriarchy we live under. And we're like, but if you actually lived under the patriarchy that you claim, you wouldn't be allowed
to be able to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. You wouldn't be allowed to exist. Like, it's only because men put up with you that you're even allowed to do this. But anyway, so one thing we've talked about is maybe if it's not going to be one per household, which I think is a pretty good way to do it, it could be, say, something like men and women both have to serve, like a Starship Troopers type of thing. So, and it doesn't have to be necessarily the military, but in some capacity where they're basically like civil servants for a while, because it could be like, say you have like a national identity, like in America 2 or whatever we decide to call it. In order for you to be like in touch with that national identity, you would have to serve it. So then, like, oh, well, if I vote the wrong way, I'm going to throw all this, away. So
I'm totally fine with that. And Starship Troopers is a fantastic and underrated film that everybody should watch. It's the truth of egalitarianism and fascistic.
More than that, meritocracy.
Yeah. It's a really good movie. It's really campy, but it's fantastic. Yes, I think that's totally true. And that way you could just skirt the gender issue. And that's why don't they do that in the military? They used to have these uniform PTs where women just couldn't possibly do them. And then the Army revamped them so that it was some fucking point system and blah, blah. And women only have to do an hanging arm thing rather than the pull-ups or whatever. It's like, just keep it the way it is so that no woman but the buffest lesbian could ever succeed in this. It's like 1% women succeed. So why they didn't even have to talk about the gender thing.
No,
they just uphold the PT.
No, but I think that all of our institutions have become like, they basically all have cancer now. All of them. Like they all have feminist cancer, because even if they disagree, first of all, they're too cowardly to say something. In most cases, if they disagree, they're too cowardly to say something because they're afraid for their job, or maybe the worst thing is that they're afraid that they'll be seen as misogynist.
Who cares?
Oh, I know. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But there is a tremendous fear of being seen as a bigot, and I think that a lot of conservative and right-wing commentators contribute to that problem by giving lip service to anything to do with identity politics. Anything. I don't, I think that all of it should be thrown out. We should not be giving them lip service for any of that. And I say that as someone who could probably benefit from it to some degree. But I hate it. I've always hated it. And I think that, for example, like before anyone criticizes a woman, not even feminism, okay, a woman, if someone starts off by saying, look, guys, I don't hate women, okay, I just want to criticize this one, stop doing that. Like,
stop apologizing.
Treat them like you would a man. If a man says something stupid and you think he's a retard, then call the woman a retard if she says something stupid. That's
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of identity politics, I do disagree with you a little bit, though, because this philosophy that we can just shed our identity in favor of an ideology, that is a high IQ attribute. Like, dumb people cannot do it. They are innately tribalistic, and we have to accept that, like, a lot of people in our society fucking dumb. Too dumb to do that. They can't just be like, oh, I'm American. It doesn't matter that I'm black or that I'm Mexican or whatever. People care about these things, and I think to some degree it's innate. I don't think we're able to avoid that.
No, I agree. I just I guess there's a way to accommodate that without submitting to that, is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, how do we do that? That is the $1 million question, isn't it?
Well, I think that there can be ways to, because this is the thing that I'm actually struggling with now, is like, okay, I can and I will continue to criticize what needs to be criticizing until the cows come home. But I think that it's important to offer an alternative, to offer some other way to see things, so that people who, are on the fence, or, maybe they agree, but they're having a hard time shedding some of this stuff, like they have some way to transition over.
Can I ask you a series of personal questions about your racial makeup?
Do it.
and your childhood. So you grew up in Chicago in a low income community.
Very.
And what's your ethnic background?
My family's from Puerto Rico.
Okay, so you're Puerto Rican, you're second generation Puerto Rican?
I am the first generation born in America.
Okay.
My parents came here from PR, yeah.
So you probably grew up in like a Puerto Rican part of like a black neighborhood?
It was, basically like a mostly black and Hispanic neighborhood.
And when did you come around to this way of thinking?
So it took a little while. But you know what, though? I was always, because maybe I was weird, because there was a poor white kid that lived in my building when I was 5 years old, and I used to make mud pies with him. And, when you're a little kid and you didn't have video games and porn and all these other distractions, you would just go dig up worms and bugs and make mud pies. And so I would hang out with, and we were poor, so I didn't have a bicycle. What do you think? So, and he was a little white boy, but I think that when my perspective changed, I didn't think about race at all. And then I turned 11, and I was discovered that I was smart, I guess, for a Latino. And I got put into I was one of those kids that was bored in class because I got everything. And my teacher, she thought I was gifted, and I took some test and I got into a special program. And there was a school bus that would pick me up and take me to this school that was kind of out of my neighborhood. And there I had a shared classroom with Asians, an Indian kid, some black kids, some white kids. And I remember, Koreans, like I was seeing people I had never seen in real life, ever in my life, Asians and Indians. It was insane. And, but like we didn't talk about race. I never really had like a bug up my ass about racial identity politics. Maybe it's because I was fortunate enough to, basically be around different kids. And I acknowledged our difference, but I never thought, I'm struggling because of the white man. And
maybe it's because you were given those opportunities.
Maybe, but there was something else though. In our media, when I was a little older, like in the 90s, in our media, there was a lot of critique in like Hollywood even against a kind of like racism of the gaps.
Yeah.
For example, so there was a movie, I remember making fun of it, and it stood out for me. I still think about this movie. It's called Boomerang, and it starred Eddie Murphy. It was one of Eddie Murphy's movies. And in this movie, there was a character played by Martin Lawrence. And Martin Lawrence was a friend of Eddie Murphy's in the film. And he was this black guy that saw racism in everything. And it was a running gag. He would they'd be playing pool and he would say, this is racial because you're the white ball and you got to knock all the colored balls into the pocket. And you know which one you say for last? The black 8 ball is last. That's racial, and it was a joke and we all laughed at it. We thought it was so preposterous to find racism in everything. So I wonder if culturally we weren't doing the same things. I don't think we were,
That's probably true. Yeah. Did you find yourself alienated after you became a public figure?
Absolutely.
From your
Even
family?
before that. Well, no, I mean, my family, they generally accept me. I don't talk about the stuff that I do with my mother. I don't think she would get it. But I have cousins and stuff and they're cool with what I do. And I think that they agree, although they're afraid to speak up themselves.
This is very interesting because I found my experience with Puerto Ricans specifically has been much aligned with this. Like I have these Puerto Rican friends and they love white people and America because they're like, listen, if you're in Puerto Rico, it's just people drinking and smoking weed and doing whatever they want because they're on island time constantly. And they love the work ethic here. And they just talk about it all the time. They're like, Puerto Rico sucks. Why do you think we came here?
Yeah, nobody lives in Puerto Rico. No, I mean, I have family there, but most Puerto Ricans are they're actually in the US. There's way more of them.
Yeah. Here. It's a really interesting phenomenon because I feel like I don't get the same thing from Mexicans or Guatemalans. I don't hear this in the same way that I hear it from Puerto Rico.
I think it depends on what they're fleeing. Because Cubans are probably some of the most patriotic. Yeah, absolutely. They're absolutely. Yeah. I've actually been meaning to get Enrique Tarrio on because I'd love to talk to him. But I think it comes from where you're leaving. And I also think that there might be an evolutionary element to it, too, because when people live in the Caribbean or you're close to the equator, right? The lifestyle is completely different. I think that because, in PR, everyone, it's like Louisiana, everything moves slow, the food grows on the trees. Yeah. You have all the time in the world. It's a different environment. But when you're in the city or in the further north, where it's cold, it's you gotta hustle. I think the environment has an effect on it. I think that's one of the reasons why Europeans, Northern Europeans in particular, built so much of what we call Western civilization. A lot of it had to do with their environment. It was winter's coming, I don't want to die, so we're going to basically put in some work, right? Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, it's just it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, there's bananas. Yeah. It doesn't matter. So
but still, I think it's somewhat anomalous, when you see what the average Haitian is like, also, and they're so close geographically. It's what happened
that's
there?
True. I certainly believe there's cultural factors as well. Yeah. One of the things too, is Hispanics or Latinos. They're a very matriarchal organism. Right. There is this thing about machismo that guys try to, but ultimately the mothers, they run the roost, and it makes it, that's one of the reasons why I actually do have some conflict with my mother because, she still thinks of me as her child and she's very possessive and it's not really good for you when you want to go out on your own. Yeah. Right. So just don't be too overprotective of your kids is what I'm saying, because you can stunt them.
Yeah. I can see how it could happen, though.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine my daughter growing up right now. I'm like,
oh, my God.
She's 9 months old and I'm like, it's going to be like this forever, right?
No. Well, so what kind of things are you doing to sort of maximize your output for your children? I know that you talked to Owen Benjamin about homesteading and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you had him on the show. Yeah.
am preparing to homestead. I live in North Idaho right now, and I'm planning to stay. I'm trying to circle the wagons with my family. Like, I'd like to get everybody out here because I truly believe in the depths of my soul that we are going to witness a post-apocalyptic societal collapse. And I thought we were like 20 years out until this coronavirus shenanigan. And now I'm like, I think this is going to happen a lot faster. So I do live in a town right now, but I don't foresee this being a sustainable situation. And I kind of have a 5 to 10 year plan. So like, as far as my homesteading right now, it's very basic. Like, I've got like a few plants, and I have some books on canning, and I have like a year of freeze dried food and a bunch of guns, but that's basically it. Owen's operation is really good. He's got like a whole thing going on.
I know. He's goats
in my neck of the woods though, so.
Is he? Okay. Yeah. I want to talk to him again. I had him on a couple of years ago, and he was still on YouTube way before any of this stuff happened.
Not so crazy now, is he, folks?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't think he was. You know, I think he's a really smart guy, and I think he was way ahead of the curve. But I do think it was easy for us to dismiss that. So I got a couple super chats. I'm going to read them really quick. Sure. Egregious Charles gives us $5 and says, the only guys who want a large number of partners rather than a really good partner are guys who think it's a laudable accomplishment. Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from, because the thing is, I still see that if you're an adult guy and you're still talking about how much ass you crush, I just don't have a lot of respect for that. And it's not, do you, it's your business, but I'm not going to see that as an achievement, because you have to know, and this is something that I think that it puts me at odds with red pillars, PUAs, and MGTOW in a way too, is that if you really don't care about the future of our civilization, then yeah, I can't make you care, right? That's fine if you don't care. But if you do, and you're doing this stuff, I hope you realize you're actually not making things better, you're making things worse. Because if you take random chicks home and bang them and then send them on their way and don't call them back and don't want to, form any relationship, you're basically contributing to that pattern. Now, I'm not saying that she wasn't, being a slut beforehand or whatever, but I think that working towards something sustainable that's going to build something is some actions that you would be taking if you want to make things better. You're actually not, and by the way, it's not rebellious, or you're not fighting feminism. You're actually contributing to it, because feminism wants to create antagonism, competition, and general mistrust, fear between men and women. That's what it wants to do. So when men say, so when it's in the same way that women will say, well, I was out at night and I'm afraid of men, and so I'm gonna basically view them all with suspicion. It kind of contributes in the same way when men say, well, that they have fear or distrust of women. Now, I'm not saying that none of it is warranted. I think that there are people who are dangerous,
you're
but
walking around at night, like, you should definitely be afraid.
Or at least should also be aware.
Really afraid of what women can do in divorce situations. And
yes,
like that.
Yes. Or with false rape accusations, like, these things all really happen. And the Me Too movement has destroyed people, and it never held anyone accountable that should be. But you made a comment about all the chicks that banged Harvey Weinstein. And I was saying that from the very beginning. And look, I don't like Harvey Weinstein, but I don't think that he is what the Me Too movement made him out to be. I think that most of those transactions, because I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary, were consensual. It was women who wanted to be famous. Yeah, it was women who wanted to be famous, and this guy was offering them fame. And that's literally what he did. Like, no one in Hollywood is particularly talented. They're just connected. It's true. Like, I mean, I've met actors that work on like small stage plays, and they're better than these people and more talented. They're like, they know how to play instruments. They know how to dance. They know how to sing. They're not like in these small stage plays because they suck. They
Yeah.
just haven't sucked Harvey Weinstein's dick. That's the only, that's the only thing. So like,
Yeah.
but the narrative is not that. The narrative never says, well, ladies, if you signed a contract, what did you do to sign the contract? No, because you're not allowed to say that. Why is that? Because feminism says you can't do that.
And as a society, we had an opportunity to have a discussion about the nature of transactional sex. And, transactional sex happens consensually in marital relationships all the time. Even when there was a virgin with a dowry, in many ways, isn't that transactional sex? Like, I'm not even making a value judgment about transactional sex. I guess I am to these people because you're literally sucking an old man's balls so that you can pretend to be somebody else on someone's TV screen.
Yeah, how are you going to get into the next X-Men movie? Well, I gotta do this,
I know, I don't really understand it, but acting like sex isn't often, even the majority of time, transactional. It's just dishonest. We're just being dishonest with ourselves. Like, let's be real here. This is all low-level prostitution, all of it. So we could have discussed this as a society, but instead we're like, this dude is a rapist. And I read all the claims. And of all of them, there was only one person even making the accusation of forcible rape. Most of the women were like, he coerced me by saying that he's going to withhold the blah, blah, blah. Mira
Sorvino. Mira Sorvino. She was the daughter of the other Sorvino who was in Goodfellas.
And she is a fantastic actress. But you look at her history, she did like Romeo and Michelle and one other movie and then fell off the map. And it's because Harvey Weinstein tried to bang her and she was like, no, absolutely not. Go fuck yourself. And then he blackballed her from Hollywood and then she had kids and she's living a fine life and her integrity is intact.
I was going to say, it sounds like a woman with integrity.
Yeah. And everybody's acting like Jennifer Lawrence couldn't have just been like, no, I'm not going to fuck you. Like, of course that's an option. She could have just said no. And she was already pretty famous when this stuff happened. I love that she's the only one that comes out, this like white super gentile girl who's like, Harvey Weinstein never tried anything with me when we were in love. I'm like, that's because you clearly banged him. Like, what? Like, are we all gonna act like this didn't happen? It's like, fine, all right, whatever. But what I have no tolerance for is these chicks that voluntarily banged Harvey Weinstein to advance their careers, and then when they're all walled out and their careers are over, they're like, he raped me. It's like, you got what you wanted from him, he got what he wanted from you, and you had a consensual transaction, which in many ways is more straightforward than other sexual relationships. Yep. I would argue that's more straightforward than taking some drunk girl home from a bar.
Yep.
It's more above board.
Absolutely. I think that he's probably going to beat all of the cases against him because of it. Yeah. And of course, what is that going to do? And this is like it's just like they're doing the Derek Chauvin case started today. Yeah. Right. They put their opening arguments out. Right. and again, most likely Derek Chauvin's going to beat if the jury's not corrupt. And, that we don't know because I don't trust the courts either. But assuming that evidence and reason and common sense wins the day, there's a pretty solid chance that Derek Chauvin is going to beat all of these charges. And in both of these cases, just these two random examples I bring up, all that does is it ultimately serves the left because they get to say, oh, look, the system doesn't work. Clearly, he was a serial rapist. Clearly, he was a racist, white supremacist cop that wanted to murder a black man that day. That's why he got a job and worked there for 20 years and trained other cops and lived in the community and, married an Asian woman because he's racist.
It's just so preposterous. Did you hear this news? Okay, I don't know if this is true, but I heard it from one person today and I did not look into it. That he was shooting fentanyl up his butt?
No, I had not heard that. I heard that he took he also had something else in his system, oxy in his system that he took. But no, I did not hear he was shooting fentanyl up his butt. That is news to me. Are we talking about Derek Chauvin? I'm kidding. I think I know who we're talking about.
George Floyd. I mean, if he was like doing drugs in that way, I mean, you're deep down the drug rabbit hole if you're doing fentanyl like that. And there's apparently some street name for it. Okay, I'm not seeing anything about this on Google, so maybe what I've been told.
I wouldn't go to Google for facts. That's
My
one
search
thing right off
history
the bat.
is damning. It is damning. The point is that this guy had a mile-long rap sheet. He was a plague to society, the dregs of society, and to his community. The world is a better place for him being dead, and I don't at all care that he's dead, and I'm not going to act like this was some racially motivated crime. Now, he is probably going to get off or get charged with some like 3rd-degree manslaughter or whatever the fuck. What even is that? I've never even heard of that charge before. Isn't manslaughter just like
maybe
yeah,
it's like an accident. Maybe a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
You know,
and
like
then
that's
Minneapolis gonna melt down. Every American city, it's just gonna be like last summer all over again. The alternative is that there's no justice for him. So there really is no good outcome in this situation, is there?
But that's what they want. Like that's what I'm saying. All of this contributes to the narrative of tearing everything down because, you know, I have you seen this Clubhouse audio recording that was making the rounds for a while, a couple of weeks ago?
Is it the 2019 arrest?
No. So Clubhouse is like I'm not really sure. I guess it's sort of like a group chat app. Okay. Where people can all enter a room and a person can be sort of like an admin and they can put people in the back of the room and those people in the back can't talk, but they can raise their hand and other people, you can give platforms to some people. Right. It's some new group voice chat thing. And there was a group of people, I think it was Brett Weinstein, and there was another gentleman, and I apologize, I can't remember his name, and they put together a Clubhouse room where they were discussing if wokeness in Clubhouse was a problem.
Yeah.
And what it attracted was a bunch of like radical, well, I don't even want to say radical because they're not. It's not fringe. Like they were just leftists. Leftists bombarded the chat. BLM supporters, Antifa supporters, they bombarded the chat. They got in and they took over and they essentially took over the entire Clubhouse chat room. And they used it to essentially just engage in a giant circle jerk where they just talked about how racist and white supremacist everyone is. And they also put, Brett Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, the guy from Evergreen College, on trial, and they held his feet to the fire. They made him confess his white supremacy and all this other crap. But like what I took from it, though, a lot was taken from it. Like Brett Weinstein is a moral coward, but I knew that already. But like one of the things I took from it was that ultimately these people did not want anything. They just wanted to burn everything down. Yeah. So like they're the ultimate nihilists. Like they just don't believe that any change is good unless it's complete leveling of the playing field, like the leveling of everything. And I don't remember why I brought that up. It was mainly to point out that they just want to smash everything down. So like, oh yeah, right. Well, what we're experiencing with like what the potential outcomes of the Derek Chauvin case is essentially it's lending towards that desire, because if Chauvin doesn't get convicted of anything, or if he gets a conviction that they just don't find satisfactory, which could be anything, they're just gonna go crazy, and the only thing that will stop them are going to be citizens that have had enough. And I don't know what what that's going to look like, but I also live in a small town, so I probably won't have to deal with it.
Yeah, me neither, for sure. But still, I don't want to see American cities ruined. I still have a soft place. Mm-hmm. I've lived in New York, I've lived in LA, I've lived in Seattle. I still have a soft place in my heart for American cities, and I don't want to see these places destroyed. It's probably how you feel about Chicago, but at the same time, there is something satisfying about being vindicated.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm with you on that. I don't think it's inevitable. I think that it's good. We're going to be experiencing a lot more pain really soon. And well, it all comes down to, because this is the thing. Like I always wonder, how big is the silent majority, and what do they feel? And the thing I've noticed is living here, if I talk to anyone about what's going on, they side with me. Yeah. Right off the bat. Yeah. But and I mean, I don't know if they're vocal in their personal life, but I have noticed that the sentiment is growing sometimes I think that people need to take a break from social media because
Oh
it's
yeah.
extremely distorts reality.
Yeah.
I actually think that most of what we see on social media is coming from a minority of people.
Not just
So,
the political stuff too. The way people
mhm.
painstakingly misrepresent their lives is somewhat shocking. You're not probably not involved in these Instagram mom communities, but I just like look at these
No,
people's
but I
lives.
want to hear about that.
I'm like, there's no way you're waking up at 6 in your perfect clean kitchen and like making all the meals of the day for your family, and your kids are so well behaved. It's like I wake up and I look like I just got run over by a truck. Like I'm covered in vomit and baby poop, and then like I've been up all night. It's like, can people just be honest about that their lives are largely mundane, and then a big portion of them it's also really shitty, and then they're just
Mhm.
interspersed with these moments of happiness. That's how everybody on Earth lives. Why can
Yeah.
nobody be honest about that? It's so frustrating. And the political stuff too. It's people lack moral courage, and I don't know if you know who Greg Johnson is, but when I got doxxed, it was traumatic. Like my local newspaper from my hometown saw a video, and they doxed me and my family, and it was just scathing. Like I couldn't believe that it happened, and I was traumatized. Like it was so terrible. But I talked to Greg Johnson about it, and he was like, "Listen, you can only get doxed one time, once." And at that moment, after I got through that week, it was like I came back so much stronger. And I want people to realize that if you get canceled, it's not the end of your life. There's a group of literally millions of people who have been canceled. Like at a
Mhm.
certain point, they're going to overplay their hand, and there will be so many of us that we can actually create our own society and our own network of commerce. It's like, if you guys really want to cancel everybody, I can't wait till everybody is canceled. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be like a
Yeah.
party in hell. So fine, go for it. But if these things are happening to people, just have the moral courage to stand up for yourself, because if you compromise your integrity, you will never get over that. You'll always feel bad about it. But if you get canceled, it'll go away in a week.
All right. Well, thanks. Thank you for that. I think that because we've gone a little over, so I'm going to read the rest of the super chats.
Okay.
And after we've talked, depending on if they're, worthy of any little conversation, we'll finish that and then we'll wrap it up. So the Great Indoors 1979 makes a post that I want to comment on. Maybe if you want to give your thoughts. He gives us €2 and he says, and I apologize, I'm sorry that you're paying in euros, but he gives us €2 and he says, I wonder what the welfare gap looks like. And it's kind of a joke, but one of the things that I think about that I think a lot of people miss is the welfare. Bringing up welfare is interesting because
Yeah.
one thing that a lot of MRAs even miss is that the welfare state is a leftist program that men overwhelmingly pay for in the majority.
Yeah.
Like I think it's something like, and I know a guy who does a lot of research into statistics on this, and it's essentially determined that men pay 80% of like welfare costs in their taxation. So like in the way, because men, even though women are also paying into the taxes, men pay more into taxes than women, and women overwhelmingly benefit. Like they're the ones taking out. So, and this is another example of how, when I say you can't really leave the system. So like, when MGTOW say, well, I'm not going to get married and, I'm not going to date or whatever. I'm not against that. I get it. I understand, you should be careful with who you spend time with, and you shouldn't participate in a system that wants to hurt you. But remember that you haven't actually escaped, because if you're paying taxes, you are giving money to women.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're giving money to women that don't deserve it, because like they're either in a marriage where they don't need welfare because they're choosing to be a stay-at-home mom or whatever, or they're in the workforce. So if they're benefiting from welfare, then they're not doing those two things, right? Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I wish people could just opt out
of welfare. Yeah, right.
But you can't. I mean, I think that what we're going to have to do is, as a society, come to some sort of a agreement where we withhold our tax dollars for programs that we find morally repugnant. But I don't really know how we can go about that. And I am clamoring for a federal crime to be committed. So maybe I should shut my mouth.
What?
a federal crime. Yeah, I'm like just talking about how people should commit horrible tax evasion.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It is a wealth transfer to women, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then lastly, Albert Data Retro gives us $5 Canadian. And he says, hey, Brian, please send her a link to my North Country video. Yada, yada, yada. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So he did this guy. He made a video about the making of I don't know if it's a film or a show or something called North Country that talks about all of the kind of sexual harassment and general mistreatment that Charlize Theron and other people were doing to the men on set.
Oh, really?
It's essentially like a flip of, what we usually get. Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I remember Bryan Singer, right? This is something, just as an aside. Brian, what Bryan Singer did to Hugh Jackman?
Yeah.
Where they played a prank on him. And he basically, like, did this scene from X-Men 2. And he, like, comes out of this room and he's completely naked. And the entire cast is there, the whole crew. And they all see Hugh Jackman naked. And it's a prank, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if everyone is they all had a laugh or whatever, it's fine. But if that was a woman, we wouldn't hear the end of it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and I try not to be the kind of person that tries to match outrage with outrage, because I don't think that's constructive. I would rather that we all just like grew some balls and just got over shit, instead, because I don't want to feed into that. So, but yeah, so if you want, I can send you the link to that afterwards. Okay. And Great Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says, how would Blonde compare the women accusing Weinstein with the girls who are victims of lover boys? I see a somewhat comparable lack of agency. Girls who are victims of lover boys?
I'm actually not familiar with this phenomenon. Are you?
I mean, nothing's capitalized. I'm not. Are you saying, oh, wait, maybe. I'm not sure what you're saying with that. But one of the other things that I heard about Weinstein, I forgot to mention this. There was a woman who was making accusations against him, and they described it as he had her under his thrall. Did you hear? That was the grave crime that Weinstein committed. He was so charming.
Ugh.
That he had her under his thrall. Yeah, I don't buy it. I mean, obviously, but this is like another one of these like weak accusations. So I'm sorry, Great Indoors. I'm not certain what you mean by girls who are the victims of lover boys.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Unless you're just talking about really charismatic guys that get women to fall for them or maybe trick them into sex. I don't think you can really. Could you trick a woman into sex? No. Could you? Like, I mean, like, I'm not without drugging them or anything, but like, could you coerce a woman with enough pressure to have sex with you, and then she discover afterwards that she didn't want to do it?
Yeah, I think you probably. I mean,
I guess if you don't think they have as much agency.
Yeah, I struggle with this because of my. Inextricable link with myself. I have a hard time admitting that. But I think that what we're talking about is the age-old dance of like immoral misrepresentation and kind of puffing yourself up a little bit as a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to just kind of exaggerate your good qualities, but to outright lie.
Oh, I see. Like present a false. What is it that Chris Rock says? People, when men and women meet, they don't meet the people, they meet their representatives.
That's so funny and true. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's rape. I think the best example of this is like a naive woman kind of in the throes of love with a much more experienced man, and he's telling her like, I'm going to marry you, you're going to be the mother of my children and everything.
We're going to go to Cancun. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then she sleeps with him and he's like, I'm done with you.
Yeah. Or he's not there in the morning or something.
Yeah. Is that rape? No. Is it highly unethical? Yeah, for sure. Did he trick her into having sex? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I guess the important thing is it's not a crime. It just means, we should also be equipping people with the tools. So if they don't want to be tricked, then, here are some things to look out for. I mean, do the best you can. Nothing is guaranteed.
We've all made mistakes, but
Yeah, we've all done the walk of shame. All right, so Albert Nader Retro gives us $5 Canadian and says it was Lee Cleary and it was just the women from the production staff. He also stabbed himself with the Wolverine claws. Oh yeah, I know about that. I did a video about that too. All right.
Yikes! I didn't know about any.
Yeah, you can look that up. So we're going to wrap it up here. So I wanted to talk about so much more, but we are out of time because you have a baby that you got to deal with and all that.
I can hear my husband downstairs like really struggling with it.
Oh,
sorry. Towards the end there, I'm trying to.
He's a champ, but we'll wrap it up here. So I'm gonna go into the patron only show for you guys. Unfortunately, Blonde's not gonna be able to come with me, but we'll be able to chit chat for a while if I'm good enough. And
I really appreciate you inviting me on. It was a great discussion. So thank you. So much.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot too. So I guess I'll talk to you a little bit after. We're going to wrap it up here. Thanks, guys, so much for coming on. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. Also, share the video around. Let's just see if anyone else wants to bite before everything collapses.
Yeah, really.
So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. We'll talk to you in the next video.
Thanks, guys.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.